so many superheroes that feel like they are not worthy of the power they possess, but who are the ones that actually didn't earn it? Jack's origin story is a wild ride, so strap in. One night, Jack is driving home when he comes across this car and it's on fire. The car is filled with local criminals, no survivors except for this one guy. Jack believes that he wasn't a criminal though. Because he's a doctor, he took this guy home to help him out. A hospital would have been too far, apparently. Lucky for Jack, when the man lay actively, passing away on his couch, he revealed he actually has like fire powers and needed to pass those powers on. At first, Jack was like, I can't take these because there's a good chance you could live if I call an ambulance. But then he realized that if the guy makes it to the hospital but then doesn't live, someone else would get the powers. So he lied to the man, told him he called an ambulance but they were all busy, which wasn't true. In Jack's mind, he was doing something good because he knew he would use the powers for good, I guess. But still, the man had a chance to live. Jack felt guilty about it at least. That is Jack's real origin story, but because he felt bad and he didn't want people finding out he essentially let someone pass for power, he made up a different origin and lied about it. Did he do something easy and just say that the guy was already past the point of saving when he found him, but he did everything he can? No, of course not. Instead, he said that he was helping the police on a case where zombies were abducting hobos and turning them into zombies with a ray gun. He was kidnapped and brought before the zombie master who tried to turn Jack into a zombie, but Jack was familiar with hypnosis, so it didn't work on him. The zombie master got mad, dialed things up to 11, and the ray gun blew up, ending the master and giving Jack his powers. And that was his story for decades. Jack doesn't feel like he earned his powers since there was a good chance the man could have lived, and honestly, it's a good argument. Alright, so this next hero is definitely gonna ruffle some feathers. I can feel it. Batman.
Bruce Wayne.
Now listen, before you run off to the comment section, I personally do think that Bruce Wayne has earned the respect that comes with being Batman. He has done some questionable things, but he is a good man and an even better hero, so why is he here? Also, he doesn't have any traditional superpowers, so like literally why is he here?
Locked as well.
Well, last night I was brainstorming ideas for this video and I asked my roommate if she could think of any heroes that didn't earn their powers, and without hesitation she said, oh, Batman. His superpower is being rich. He didn't earn that, he inherited it. And I will not lie, that is a funny take on this. Personally, my response was, well, his parents were literally taken out in front of his eyes. I think that entitles him to some financial compensation. So you let me know where you stand on this pressing issue. Are you Team Juliana, Batman earned it, or Team Roommate, Batman is not worthy? Have fun. I mean, why am I here if not to stir up drama in the comment section? Next is Booster Gold or Michael Carter. There can definitely be an argument made that this hero didn't earn his superpowers. I mean, he literally stole his powers from a museum and time traveled back in time so he could be widely loved. That's the short form version of what happened. Sure, it's hard to spin feeling like a loser in his time, so he steals artifacts and time travels back in time to an era where he would be a hero in a positive light, but if you had the eyes to see, you would find that the guy has a heart of gold and he just didn't know what to do with it. His mom was suffering from a disease but couldn't afford the bills, so Booster would bet on his football games and then throw them on purpose to get the money. Bad thing to do for a good reason.
I'm afraid being famous isn't the same as being a true hero.
And when he did get to the 21st century, he did good. He actively worked to be a superhero, eventually becoming a valued member of the Justice League. So yeah, maybe Booster Gold didn't deserve the power at first, but he certainly went on quite the journey to earn it. Sidebar though, the way I want Glenn Powell in this role, and I'm being completely serious about that, he would be perfect DC. I am begging. Booster Gold Volume 2 Issue 23 cover, that is me. The Wizard had to make this list because what do you mean he got his powers from a transfusion with a mongoose? Robert Frank and his dad moved to Africa for a medical expedition. While there, Robert contracted a fatal disease. Nothing was working to cure him until his dad tried a mongoose transfusion. This action didn't just save Robert's life, it gave him super speed. Now, he did go on to use his powers for good. However, getting them from a mongoose, you can't come back from that, I fear. It seems Marvel realized how goofy this idea idea was and retconned it, saying that the mongoose procedure just activated a latent mutant gene, and that is actually where his super speed came from. Sentry certainly has an interesting origin story too, though. Robert Reynolds was in search of some substances that he was addicted to, so he broke into a lab.
I'm Bob.
The world is not a good place for you, Bob.
He was not looking for superpowers. He was literally just looking for something to make himself metaphorically float, if you catch my drift. Point is he was a societal reject. He just happened to break into the lab of a scientist who had some golden super soldier serum, or the Sentry serum. He stole it, drank it, and now he's a superhero. He struggled controlling the new power, even though he knew he wanted to use it for good. Many Marvel fans describe the guy as just like unstable. He was completely unprepared for the powers he stole, and sometimes still is, discovering new things every day, but at least he's trying. Technically though, an argument could be made that most superheroes and most mutants especially don't earn their powers. Lots of them just kind of wake up with them one day, or they just have them. It's the journey that earns it. There is one particular mutant that I think is still in the process of earning his power. Magneto. Bold choice, I know, but the man's body count goes crazy, so like, Magneto is one of, if not the most powerful mutant alive, and for a long, long time he used his powers to hurt, harm, and destroy. He was a broken man that grew up in a way that nobody should, but that doesn't excuse the way he treated people and innocents.
Is this what I am?
Magneto seems to have finally learned that lesson, and for the time being has set his evil ways aside to assist the X-Men. Thor went through a period where he was unworthy and had to earn back his powers. Thor has powers like on his own, he's a god, but his hammer is a large part of his act and identity, so he does kind of need / want it. Nick Fury had said Gore was right to Thor, and that made him lose the ability to wield his hammer, essentially making him unworthy. And Gore was the guy that goes around taking out gods because he believes they are more harmful than good.
Some god for you.
Thor already had doubts about how good gods were for people, that having such a prominent Marvel figure say those doubts were legit, it just shattered his resolve. But honestly, this was kind of great for the character. Like in the first Thor movie, it forced him to take a step back and relearn what it is to be a hero, ultimately realizing that heroes are there to help people, not for fame and glory. Now, I love Marvel parody comics, but I hate Fight Man. Who is that, you might ask? He is Frank Bigelow, a local superhero that is so bad at his job, the city started protesting to get him to stop. Fight Man issue 1 literally had like giant lizard dinosaurs stomping around town and a gang of supervillains running around, and it was better for the city that Fight Man hung up his cape. He woke up with his powers one day, a human mutate. He's like a parody of Superman essentially. He flies, he's strong, invulnerable, super breath. He can also create energy blasts. The comic was done in the 90s, which is also loosely referred to as Marvel's experimental era, so that explains why this hero is so strange. He's just not a good person, like at all. He fights with absolutely no care as to how he's hurting the people and area around him. He appears to operate with no remorse. He's gone through 15 sidekicks. I'm pretty sure none of them survived. And worst of all, his jokes aren't funny. Just no redeeming qualities to be found here. He does exist on Earth 616, I just have no idea where he is. I'm sorry if anyone does have a personal attachment to this wacky character, but truly, I wish him nothing but the worst. Y'all, be careful with what you drink, because you might just accidentally consume an experimental super plastic fluid mixture that turns you into a giant bouncy ball. Poor Chuck Tane is a victim of this wildly specific circumstance. He really didn't do much past drink what he thought was pop, so yeah, he didn't exactly put in the work and put in the hours, if you know what I mean. Chuck, in addition to being a human-sized bouncy ball, is pretty durable, and him, as a person, is very smart, so he's not completely useless, just a little bit goofy. And A.G. Bell is the phone ranger, but he hasn't really done the work to be a hero. He's really good at fixing telephones, and that's it. He happened to get a job fixing a space alien telephone that he could modify into a phone that could tap into any line. He wired it so he would always be the first person to get a 911 call, which That's not great. Seconds matter when it comes to those. And what if he can't help the situation, and there is a very real possibility he can't help because he has no other powers than like phone fixing. Imagine you are on the ground in need of a doctor and a phone repairman shows up. No, thank you. He wasn't completely hopeless, but he wasn't completely helpful either. He was once unable to dodge a projectile that hit him in the face, so everyone thought he was done for, but then he just came back.
Kicking off our list at number 10 is the man without fear himself, Daredevil. Blinded as a child by a radioactive substance that splashed into his eyes while saving a man from an oncoming truck, Matt Murdock gained extraordinary abilities. The radioactive chemicals amplified his remaining senses beyond normal human capacity, granting him a radar sense that allows him to perceive the world in a way no sighted person ever could. His heightened hearing, touch, smell, and taste, combined with a radar-like sense, more than compensate for his lack of sight, making him a formidable fighter and a champion of justice in the crime-ridden streets of Hell's Kitchen. Some of Daredevil's most famous comic book appearances include the gritty Daredevil Born Again storyline, where he confronts his nemesis, the Kingpin, and the emotionally charged Guardian Devil arc, where he faces a moral crisis while protecting a young girl. He's also had memorable appearances in film and television, with Ben Affleck portraying him in the 2003 film Daredevil, and Charlie Cox taking on the role in the acclaimed Netflix series Daredevil and the MCU film Spider-Man: No Way Home. Daredevil's origin story is a classic example of how tragedy can lead to extraordinary abilities. While his blindness is a significant challenge, it also unlocks a world of perception that allows him to fight crime in ways no sighted person could. This contrast between his blindness and his heightened senses draws a compelling parallel to the concept of blind justice, where justice is impartial and unbiased, regardless of appearances. His determination to overcome adversity and his unwavering commitment to justice make him a truly inspiring hero. At number 9, we have the Guardian of the Green, Swamp Thing. Scientist Alec Holland was working on a bio-restorative formula when his lab was sabotaged. Caught in an explosion and doused with his own concoction, he fled into the nearby swamp, where the formula interacted with the plant life, transforming him into a monstrous creature composed of plant matter. Connected to all plant life through the green, Swamp Thing possesses superhuman strength, the ability to control plant growth, and a unique form of immortality. He made his live-action debut in the 1982 film Swamp Thing, directed by Wes Craven, and was later brought to television in a self-titled series in 1990. Swamp Thing has had some incredible adventures in the comics, including Alan Moore's acclaimed run on the saga of the Swamp Thing, which explored the character's connection to the green and delved into complex environmental and philosophical themes. Swamp Thing's origin is a chilling reminder of the unpredictable nature of scientific experimentation and the potential consequences of tampering with the forces of nature. While his transformation is tragic, it also connects him to the natural world in a profound way, making him a powerful force for environmental protection. His story raises ethical questions about the responsibility of scientists and the potential for their creations to have unintended consequences. Coming in at number 8 is the Teen Titan and Justice League member, Cyborg. Victor Stone was a promising athlete whose life took a tragic turn when he was caught in a horrific accident that destroyed much of his body. To save his life, his father, Silas Stone, replaced his damaged parts with advanced cybernetics, turning him into a human-machine hybrid. With superhuman strength, enhanced senses, and a vast array of technological weaponry, Cyborg is a force to be reckoned with. Cyborg first appeared in a preview in DC Comics Presents number 26 and quickly became a core member of the new Teen Titans. He's been a mainstay in DC Comics ever since, appearing in numerous Teen Titans and Justice League titles. He made his live-action debut in the Smallville television series and was later portrayed by Ray Fisher in the Justice League film. Cyborg's story is a powerful exploration of what it means to be human in an increasingly technological world. While his transformation is initially traumatic, he learns to embrace his new identity and use his powers for good, becoming a symbol of hope for those who feel different or marginalized. He embodies the potential for technology to both enhance and challenge our humanity, and his journey is one of self-discovery and acceptance. Zooming into our list at number 7 is the fastest man alive, The Flash. Barry Allen, a forensic scientist, was working late in his lab when a lightning bolt struck a shelf of chemicals, drenching him with the electrified concoction and granting him superhuman speed. Connected to the Speed Force, the Flash can run at incredible velocities, vibrate through solid objects, and even travel through time. The Flash first appeared in Showcase number 4 and quickly became one of DC Comics' most popular heroes. He's been a key member of the Justice League and has starred in numerous comic book titles, including The Flash and Flashpoint. He's also made a splash in film and television, with Ezra Miller portraying him in the DCEU films and Grant Gustin taking on the role in the CW's The Flash TV series. The Flash's origin is a classic example of a freak accident turning an ordinary person into an extraordinary hero. His powers push the boundaries of physics, making him one of the most versatile and exciting heroes in the DC universe. He embodies the human desire to overcome limitations and achieve the impossible, and his stories often explore the consequences of altering time and reality. Swinging into our list at number 6 is everyone's favorite web slinger, Spider-Man. Peter Parker, a high school student, was bitten by a radioactive spider during a school field trip to a science exhibit. As a result, he gained superhuman strength, agility, the ability to cling to walls, and a precognitive spider sense that warns him of danger. With his quick wit and incredible powers, Spider-Man protects the innocent and battles a colorful array of villains in the bustling city of New York. Spider-Man made his debut in Amazing Fantasy number 15 and quickly became a cultural icon. He's starred in countless comic book titles, including The Amazing Spider-Man and Ultimate Spider-Man, and has been brought to life on the big screen by actors Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. Spider-Man's origin story is one of the most iconic in comic book history. His relatable struggles with everyday life, combined with his incredible powers and responsibility to use them for good, make him a hero that resonates with people of all ages. He embodies the challenges and triumphs of adolescence, and his stories often explore themes of identity, loss, and the importance of using one's gifts to help others. Standing tall at number 5 is the first Avenger, Captain America. Steve Rogers was a frail young man who desperately wanted to serve his country during World War II. Deemed unfit for combat due to his various health issues, he volunteered for a top-secret experiment known as Project Rebirth. Injected with the super soldier serum and exposed to Vita rays, he was transformed into the peak of human physical perfection. With his unwavering courage and incredible abilities, Captain America became a symbol of hope and freedom in a world at war. Captain America first appeared in Captain America Comics number 1, punching Adolf Hitler on the cover. He's been a symbol of American ideals and has appeared in numerous comic book titles, including The Avengers and Captain America: The Winter Soldier. He's also become a cinematic icon, with Chris Evans portraying him in the MCU films. Captain America's origin is a testament to the power of human potential and the importance of fighting for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. His unwavering commitment to his ideals and his willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good make him a true American hero. He represents the best of humanity, and his stories often explore themes of patriotism, duty, and the struggle against oppression. Taking his place at number 4 is the enigmatic and godlike Dr. Manhattan. Atomic physicist John Osterman was working in a lab when he was accidentally locked inside an intrinsic field subtractor. When the device was activated, his body disintegrated at a subatomic level. He eventually reassembled himself as a blue-skinned being with the ability to manipulate matter at a subatomic level. With his immense power and unique perspective on time and reality, Dr. Manhattan grapples with his humanity and his place in the universe. Dr. Manhattan debuted in the groundbreaking graphic novel Watchmen and has since appeared in the Before Watchmen prequel series and the Doomsday Clock miniseries. He was portrayed by Billy Crudup in the 2009 Watchmen film and by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II in the 2019 HBO series Watchmen. Dr. Manhattan's origin is a mind-bending exploration of the nature of reality and the consequences of absolute power. His story raises profound questions about human existence and the implications of scientific advancement. He represents the potential for both great good and great destruction that comes with scientific knowledge, and his journey is one of detachment, alienation, and the search for meaning in a universe that seems indifferent to human suffering. Smashing his way into our list at number 3 is the Incredible Hulk. Dr. Bruce Banner, a brilliant scientist, was exposed to a massive dose of gamma radiation during a bomb explosion while saving a teenager who wandered onto the testing range. This transformed him into a raging green behemoth whenever he experiences intense emotion, such as anger or fear. With his unmatched strength and destructive potential, the Hulk is both a force of nature and a symbol of the inner rage that exists within us all. The Hulk first appeared in The Incredible Hulk #1 and has been a mainstay in Marvel Comics ever since. He's been a member of the Avengers, the Defenders, and the Pantheon, and has starred in numerous solo titles. He's also been brought to life on the big screen by Eric Bana, Edward Norton, and Mark Ruffalo. The Hulk's origin is a classic example of how science can go wrong, with devastating consequences. His story explores the duality of human nature and the struggle to control our inner demons. He represents the destructive potential of unchecked rage and the challenge of balancing our primal instincts with our capacity for reason and compassion. Landing at number 2 is the community superhero, Meteor Man Jefferson Reed. A mild-mannered teacher was struck by a meteor while trying to escape a gang. This cosmic collision granted him a variety of superpowers, including flight, super strength, invulnerability, and the ability to communicate with all animals. With his newfound abilities and the support of his community, Meteor Man takes on the gang that has been terrorizing his neighborhood. Meteor Man made his debut in the 1993 film The Meteor Man, directed by and starring Robert Townsend. He later appeared in a 6-issue limited series published by Marvel Comics. Meteor Man's origin is a unique blend of superhero tropes and social commentary. His story highlights the importance of community and the power of ordinary people to make a difference in the world. He represents the potential for good that exists within everyone, and his actions inspire those around him to stand up for what's right and fight for their neighborhood. And finally, claiming the top spot on our list is Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four. Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm were on an experimental space flight when their ship was bombarded with cosmic rays. This cosmic storm granted them incredible powers. Mr. Fantastic can stretch his body, Invisible Woman can turn invisible and create force fields, Human Torch can control fire, and the Thing possesses superhuman strength and rocky skin. Together they face cosmic threats and explore the unknown as a family of superheroes. The Fantastic Four made their debut in the Fantastic Four #1 and have been a cornerstone of the Marvel Universe ever since. They've battled iconic villains like Doctor Doom and Galactus, and have appeared in numerous comic book titles, animated series, and films. The Fantastic Four's origin is a landmark moment in comic book history, ushering in the Marvel age of comics and establishing the superhero team dynamic. Their story is a testament to the power of family and the importance of using one's abilities for the greater good. They represent the spirit of exploration and the endless possibilities of science and the human imagination.
At number 10 is Black Bolt. Black Bolt, aka Blackagar Boltagon, yup, that's his actual name, had an undeniably tough start. Exposed to the Terrigen mists while still in the womb, he gained a staggering power, a voice capable of toppling buildings and even obliterating entire worlds. His arrival into the world wasn't subtle. His mere cries crumbled the structure around him when he was born. But from the moment of birth, Black Bolt was treated not as a person, but as a weapon of mass destruction. Isolation was his fate until the age of 19, and he was forbidden to utter a single word due to his uncontrollable power, spending the first 2 decades of his life in absolute silence. Now let's take a moment here to appreciate the image of a grown Black Bolt decked out in a superhero outfit sitting in his isolation chamber. I mean, come on dude, casual attire is an option. I mean, even the Joker doesn't wear purple at the Arkham Asylum. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support this channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Really appreciate it. At number 9 is Rorschach. Rorschach's backstory reads like a descent into a nightmarish abyss. A childhood entrenched in squalor, with a mother who lived a life of night walking set the tone for his grim trajectory. Bullied at school, Rorschach's retaliation marked his entry into the world of crime. But it was a chance encounter with a shifting, enigmatic dress that catalyzed his transformation. Crafting his ink-blotted mask, he embraced the persona of Rorschach. In the world of vigilanteism, he crossed paths with Night Owl and the other Watchmen, but a horrifying case left an indelible scar. Investigating a girl's abduction, he stumbled upon an unspeakable brutality. Her remains had been fed to dogs. His his retribution was unflinching, handcuffing the perpetrator amidst flames, and a gruesome ultimatum pushed the boundaries of his morality. As time went on, the line between Rorschach and Walter Korvax blurred. His mask became his face, obscuring his true self. In a twisted metamorphosis, Korvax perished and Rorschach emerged. This brutal origin story epitomizes the haunting complexity of Watchmen's characters, where darkness begets something darker. At number 8 is Red Hood. The only thing more tragic than Jason Todd's backstory is the fact that the decision to end his character was the result of a vote by fans via telephone poll. Born into Gotham and raised as the second ever Robin to Bruce's Batman, Todd's journey into heroism wasn't paved by rose petals. He met a tragic fate at the hands of the Joker when Batman's notorious nemesis whacked him mercilessly with a crowbar and left him strapped next to a bomb. Todd's demise marked the stark divergence from your typical heroic tragedy. Miraculously surviving his grim fate via some mystic shenanigans, probably involving the Lazarus Pit, he returned with a newfound edginess, embracing a more anti-hero persona as the Red Hood, which, by the way, is the Joker's original moniker. This gritty transformation challenges the traditional archetype of a superhero, delving into the complexities of vengeance, morality, and blurred lines. It seems that the darkest of beginnings can give rise to the extraordinary, if not unconventional, champions. At number 7 is Spider-Man. Spider-Man's origin story is a gripping tale of tragedy and transformation. Orphaned at an early age, he was raised by his Uncle Ben and Aunt May, growing up with a resilient spirit despite being bullied for his intellect and physicality. The twist, however, arrives when a radioactive spider bite grants him superpowers, turning Peter Parker into the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But the heart-wrenching moments don't stop there. The weight of responsibility intensifies when Uncle Ben is eliminated, largely due to Peter's inaction. See, because he got ripped off after winning his wrestling gig, he didn't mind when the place got robbed. Not until the robber went on to pew-pew his uncle in the street outside. This shattering loss becomes a driving force, propelling Spider-Man to navigate his dual life of newfound gravity. The web-slinger evolves from a carefree teen to a vigilant guardian, learning that great power demands great responsibility. At number 6, Daredevil. Daredevil, the man without fear, but with a lot of misfortune. Meet Matt Murdock. Picture a young Murdock full of good intentions attempting to save a pedestrian, but fate had other plans for him. At this moment, a radioactive substance blinds him. Not exactly a radioactive spider bite, but hey, it's Marvel. And then it gets even darker. His dad, just a hard-working boxer, ends up in the crosshairs of some ruthless gangsters. Murdock Sr. takes the fall, leading young Matt down a path of vengeance. But then it gets even worse. His love interest, Karen Page, she takes a dark turn too, selling out Daredevil's secret identity while under the influence, only then to be by the sadistically accurate Bullseye. Ouch. So here's Daredevil's origin in a nutshell. Blinded, avenging his father, dealing with loss, and grappling with betrayal. No wonder the guy's got issues. His life is like a masterclass in tragic backstories. At number 5 is The Flash. You know, when it comes to superhero origin stories, we often expect a certain level of tragedy. But Barry Allen's tale took an unexpected twist. You see, back in the day, his mother's fate wasn't the driving force behind his superhero persona. No, she was just in a coma for a little while. But then Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, things got shifted around, and suddenly, Barry's life became a roller coaster of sorrow. Enter Flash Rebirth, where the writers decided, hey, let's pile on that trauma. Now, Nora, Barry's mom, didn't just fade away quietly. No, she was brutally... And guess who's to blame? Yup, his own dad. Imagine that. But the plot gets even juicier, as we can all blame the time-meddling antics of Eobard Thawne, aka Reverse Flash. This guy goes back in time, torches Barry's home, and impales Nora, all just to mess with Barry's head. Talk about holding a grudge across timelines. It's like a soap opera with capes. At number 4 is Wolverine. Wolverine's origin story is like a psychological roller coaster that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. The dude's life is a series of unfortunate events that would make Lemony Snicket's eyebrows raise in surprise. Imagine being a sickly kid only to have your mutation pop up right after your real dad eliminates your foster dad. Then in a fit of rage-fueled vengeance, you off your biological father, leading your mom to think, oh, that's it for me, and take her own exit. Our angsty protagonist bolts with his buddy Rose, hoping to catch a breather. Just your regular tale of friendship and healing, right? Wrong. Cue his half-brother's dramatic entrance and oops, Logan's blades accidentally find their way into poor old Rose. I mean, come on, talk about life kicking you when you're down. At number 3 is Silver Surfer, a character steeped in cosmic tragedy. Norrin Rad, hailing from the planet Zen-La, has an origin that's nothing short of gut-wrenching. Forced by the cosmic juggernaut Galactus, who thrives on consuming entire worlds, Rad becomes becomes Galactus' herald. This means sourcing the cosmos for energy-rich planets to satisfy his master's insatiable hunger. At first, it doesn't seem too terrible, just avoid planets with intelligent life, right? But such planets are rare, and as guilt piles up, leading Galactus to inhabited worlds, the Silver Surfer's sanity begins to fray. Galactus, recognizing this, stifles Rad's emotions, reducing him to a mere husk. Imagine being shackled to his cosmic master's whims, his vibrant self buried under cosmic servitude. It's a tale of sacrifice, remorse, and the battle for identity woven into the fabric of the universe. At number 2, the Incredible Hulk. When we delve into the origin story of the Hulk, the surface level equation of Bruce Banner plus gamma radiation might seem straightforward, but the story goes much deeper. Sure, exposure to gamma radiation plays a pivotal role in his transformation, but why the emotional roller coaster once he's green? The answer is as complex as Bruce's psyche. Unraveling the threads leads us to Bruce's tumultuous past and the haunting figure of his father, Brian. Brian Banner's exposure to gamma radiation triggered a genetic alteration that echoed down the family tree, affecting Bruce as well. Yet it's not just the altered genes that shaped the Hulk's fury. Brian wasn't just a victim of radiation, he was a tormentor and abuser. He was a tormentor. His malevolent actions scarred Bruce's childhood. The emotional turmoil and the inability to control his anger stem from these deep-rooted traumas. The Hulk isn't just a product of scientific mishaps, it's the manifestation of the interplay between genetics and psychological wounds. A stark reminder that our origins can't be boiled down to a simple formula. And at number 1, Batman. Batman, the very mention of his name conjures up thoughts of darkness, brooding nights, and a city in need of a savior. But peel back the layers of his iconic persona and you'll uncover a profoundly tragic origin story that's etched into the annals of pop culture history and into every single one of his movies. Picture this, a young Bruce Wayne, innocent and wide-eyed, out for a faithful night with his parents. Suddenly, tragedy strikes in the form of a dark alley and the chilling sound of pew pew pew. His parents, pillars of hope, fall before his eyes, victim of this heartless act. The impact of that moment is immeasurable, and it carves a permanent scar in his soul. Now, despite being left with wealth beyond measure and a loyal butler in the name of Alfred, Bruce is burdened with unrelenting emptiness. His life goal becomes an unending quest to rid Gotham of its malevolent underbelly, driven by an unwavering desire for justice and vengeance. The Bat was born from the ashes of that night, a symbol of the darkness that took so much from him and the light he aims to restore, proving that even in the harshest crucibles of fate, heroes can emerge with unyielding strength and unwavering determination. These stories serve as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the capacity to endure unfathomable suffering, and the power to transform adversity into inspiration. So the next time you witness a superhero soaring through the skies, just remember the incredible journeys that led them there.
Number 10, Deadman. Deadman first appeared in Strange Adventures number 205 in 1967, and while he is rarely, if ever, talked about in the same circles as most of the other origin stories on this list, I find his origin relatively unique and compelling. Boston Brand was a daring circus trapeze artist known for his gruff exterior that hid a heart of gold. This gruff exterior caused him to have a lot of people who disliked him. He was known for performing death-defying acts while dressed in a corpse-like mask, until one day, during his show, he was shot and killed by persons unknown. Due to him being well liked by the Hindu goddess Ramakrishna, Brand was allowed to stay on Earth as a ghost so that he could help protect the innocents and track down his murderer and bring them to justice. He is invisible to pretty much everyone, but he has the power to enter the living and possess and control their bodies, which really sets his story apart from other heroes. His story is interesting because it tackles mortality as well as regret, and it is a catalyst for a lot of growth for Boston, despite the fact that he is a dead man. Number 9, Captain America. Captain America first came on the scene in late 1940 in Captain America Comics number 1, featuring the hero punching out the leader of the German army almost a year before America entered World War II. His origin is beautiful in its simplicity. A frail man who has been deemed unfit for service in the US military desperately wants to serve his country, and agrees to undergo an experimental procedure that will grant him incredible abilities. Before the formula can be used to create more super soldiers, a spy destroys the formula and kills the professor who created it, leaving Steve Rogers as the only super soldier. He becomes Captain America, but his secret identity is soon discovered by a young boy serving as the regiment's mascot named Bucky Barnes, and Steve decides that the most reasonable way to to deal with this is to bring the small child with him into an active war zone as his sidekick. The nuances of his origin have been explored more in the years since, but it is otherwise unchanged and was very faithfully adapted in the MCU film adaptation. Not so much in the weird 70s made-for-TV movie though. Interestingly, the first time we meet Steve in the comics is when he's undergoing the procedure, so we don't really get to know anything about his character before he is Captain America. Number 8. Wonder Woman. In her initial appearance in 1942's All-Star Comics number 8, Wonder Woman's origin was that she was the daughter of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. Hippolyta desperately wanted a child and prayed to the gods to bring life to a clay statue of a little girl that she had made. You know, like Pinocchio. Aphrodite granted her wish, and the clay became a real girl. She was raised as an Amazon, quickly learning and excelling in their ways. The Amazons lived in secret on Paradise Island until a World War II pilot named Steve Trevor crash landed. Diana saved his life and decided she wanted to come back to the world of man so that she could fight the Axis powers, as well as be with Steve, who she thought was a certified hottie. The Amazons held a competition to determine who would go, and Diana won, being allowed to go to the modern world and being given her iconic costume, tiara, and lasso of truth, and she became Wonder Woman. Her origin story has been tweaked several times over the years, with the time period changing and her being sent as an emissary from her island, but for the most part, it has stayed pretty much the same. Number 7. Captain Marvel. First appearing in 1940's Whiz Comics number 2, Billy Batson was an orphan living on the mean streets. One day, a strange man in a trench coat approached him and told the young boy to follow him into an abandoned subway station. He did, and the man revealed himself to be a wizard, and took Billy to the Rock of Eternity. The wizard, Shazam, told Billy that he had been chosen to be the wizard's champion, and gave him the power to transform into a manly superhero who had the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Atlas, and the speed of Mercury. He could transform whenever he used the magic word Shazam. So, remember kids, if a strange man ever approaches you and asks you to follow him into an abandoned building, go with him. He is probably a wizard who wants to give you powers. Billy's origin has had a few alterations over the years, but the broad strokes are pretty much unchanged. What has changed over the years is his name. After Fawcett Comics was sued by the company that would become DC for alleged copyright infringement, they claimed Captain Marvel was a ripoff of Superman. Captain Marvel was cancelled until DC bought the character and decided to bring him back. By that time, Marvel Comics had their own Captain Marvel, and though DC was allowed to keep calling the character Captain Marvel, the book had to be renamed Shazam. Eventually, it was decided it was simpler if they simply called Billy Shazam, though his name will apparently soon be changed to simply the Captain. Billy's origin is great as it is the ultimate child's wish fulfillment power fantasy. While children in comics at the time were relegated to sidekick roles, Billy was able to be the strong hero anytime he wanted with just the utterance of a magic word. His origin does a great job of tapping into a really primal desire, and it's one of my favorites. Number 6. Iron Man. Tony Stark was a wealthy weapons designer who was kidnapped by radicals. In the attack, shrapnel was lodged in his chest that would result in him dying within a week. His captors lied and told him that if he designed weapons for them, they would give him a life-saving surgery. Tony knew they were lying, but played for time, creating a metal chest plate that acted like a pacemaker, keeping him alive. Him and his fellow captive, Yinsen, secretly created a robot mech suit so that they could escape, but as it was charging up, their captors came to check on them. Yinsen sacrificed himself to allow Tony to survive, and Tony used his first Iron Man suit to take out the cell and escaped back to America. He soon decided to become a superhero, but kept his identity secret for much of his history by claiming that Iron Man was actually his bodyguard. It's an interesting origin that has aged really well, all things considered, with it having a lot of thematic weight, tackling the idea of the consequences of the military-industrial complex, and Tony being one of Marvel's most flawed heroes. Number 5. Daredevil. Matt Murdock was the son of a boxer named Batlin Jack Murdock. Jack wanted his son to have a better life than him, and forbid him from ever fighting, making him study as much as possible instead. His unwillingness to fight earned him the ironic nickname Daredevil from his bullies. One day, Matt saw a blind man crossing the street and about to be hit by a truck. Matt heroically pushed him out of the way, but was struck himself. The truck was carrying a radioactive isotope, which which got in Matt's eyes, blinding him, but granting him heightened senses that allowed him to do incredible feats. He trained to be an incredible fighter and acrobat in secret, and grew up to be a lawyer. His father was paid to throw a boxing match, but decided to win the match and was killed by a villain called the Fixer. Matt took on the daredevil persona to avenge his father's death and defend the people of Hell's Kitchen. In the 80s, Frank Miller reworked Matt's origin a bit, introducing elements like a blind mentor named Stick, but overall this relatively unique origin stuck, giving everyone one of Marvel's coolest heroes, while also providing representation for disabled people. Number 4, the Hulk. While testing his gamma bomb for the US military, Professor Bruce Banner realized that a teenager had wandered onto the test site, so he got him to safety but was caught in the blast himself. This changed him so that whenever he became angry, he would transform into the Hulk, a giant green, or gray, rage monster. The monster is frequently misunderstood and chased by the military, resulting in destructive rampages from the creature, but he has also tackled his fair share of supervillains, saving the world several times. The Hulk has changed a lot over the years, going from gray to green in his first few appearances due to printer issues, being transformed by the setting sun in his original stories, then using a gamma ray machine to control the transformations, and eventually having them be triggered by emotional stimuli. But the cause of Bruce's powers has remained consistent in the many years of the comics, with its atomic Frankenstein meets Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde themes providing Marvel with one of its most unique and interesting characters. Number 3, Spider-Man. We're in the top 3, but really, any of these next ones could be number 1 depending on your personal preference, due to each of them being absolutely iconic. When a teenager named Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider, he was granted spider powers, which he decided to use for personal gain, spending time as a wrestler and a television personality. One night, a thief ran past Spidey, and Spider-Man decided not to stop him, thinking it wasn't his problem. In a strange coincidence, the robber broke into Peter's home, resulting in the death of Peter's Uncle Ben. Spider-Man went after the crook, and upon recognizing him, was racked with guilt that his inaction resulted in an innocent life being lost. He vowed to be a hero and realized that with great power, there must also come great responsibility. All of this is present in his first appearance in Amazing Fantasy number 15 from 1962, and has remained virtually unchanged due to how strong it is. The idea of having the catalyst of the hero's heroics be his fault adds a layer of guilt to the proceedings that helps define Spidey as a character, and it really doesn't get much better than this. Number 2, Batman. When Bruce Wayne was a child, he and his parents were walking home one night when they were confronted by a robber. The robber, later named Joe Chill, shot Bruce's parents, leaving them dead on the pavement in front of the traumatized young boy. He made a vow to dedicate his life to fighting crime in Gotham City, and spent his formative years training his mind and body to be the ultimate crime fighter. When he was grown, he was almost ready, but needed some way to strike fear into the hearts of criminals, as he knew that they were a superstitious and cowardly lot. At that moment, a bat flew through his window, and he was inspired to become Batman. Over the years, this origin has been expanded upon, and his time training has been more fleshed out, but that's his origin, and it's perfect. It's dark and gothic and perfectly suits the character. It is so ingrained in our public consciousness at this point that we're kind of sick of seeing it, or even hearing about it whenever the character brings it up in media. At this point, you could just have Batman show up and never mention why he does it, and everyone would still know, and that's the mark of a strong origin. Number 1, Superman. When the planet Krypton was about to be destroyed, one child was placed in a rocket and sent to Earth so that he might survive. Once on Earth, this child was raised by a kindly couple who taught him right from wrong. When he grew up, he decided to use his powers for good and be a superhero. Disguised as mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent, whenever trouble strikes, he becomes Superman. This origin was present in its broad strokes with the character's first appearance in 1938's Action Comics number 1, which features the doomed planet and sent to Earth in a rocket elements. A year later, in Superman number 1, the story was expanded upon, introducing the Kents who took him in. And in the years since, the origin has been reinterpreted and expanded upon, but all of the initial elements are still present. Although, in her first appearance, Clark's mom is named Mary, which is funny because in the years since, they've made a pretty big deal about her name being Martha! I think this origin is one of my favorites due to how classic it is, but also the fact that it is essentially just the Old Testament story of Moses, showing how storytelling and myth has evolved over the years while still having similar themes show up over and over again.
Number 10. The Creeper. Jack Ryder was a super outspoken TV news guy in Gotham City. Now on TV, he's the host of a show where he tries to stir the pot to get everyone talking about topics like super advanced medical science and nanotech. Ryder was doing some investigating into some new tech called nanocell therapy created by one Dr. Vincent Yates. He discovered an experimental mixture which enabled the body to regenerate from practically any injury of any kind. Unfortunately though, Jack tried to steal Yates' tech at the same time as a group of mobsters, and so to keep the tech safe, the good old doctor injected his last unstable sample of nanocells into Jack Ryder. Then, right after that happens, the gangsters grant Jack a one-way ticket to the afterlife and blow his head off. Now, most of us, well, we'd be lights out and game over by that, but thanks to the nanocells reacting with his body's chemistry, Jack is completely resurrected with the ability to turn into the Creeper, this bright yellow-skinned, green-haired madman with hypnotic intimidation powers, a pain-inducing laugh, and superhuman agility, strength, speed, stamina, and enhanced reflexes. Number 9. Ultra Boy. Ultra Boy, or as he is known in his civilian guise, Jonah, possesses many of the same powers as Superboy, including superhuman speed, strength, flight, stamina, breath, vision, and invulnerability, which he gained from being swallowed by a massive space energy beast, which is essentially a giant space whale, hence the biblical Jonah name. While he was inside the energy beast's stomach, the radiation inside altered Jonah to give him superpowers. The only issue with Jonah, and it's a big one, is that he can only use one power at a time. This means that if he wants to fly through space at super speed, he must wear a spacesuit to survive in the cold vacuum, or when using his power for super strength, he is not invulnerable and can therefore get tired, feel muscular pain, or even pull a muscle. Jonah can switch these abilities almost instantly, but he needs to make the conscious choice to do so, which honestly sounds exhausting. Number 8. Jack-o'-lantern. The son of a poor farmer, Daniel Cormack was raised in Ireland. Now, like most Irish people, Daniel came into contact with the Irish fairy people, some of whom he managed to become good pals with. It turns out that the fairies actually really liked Daniel because Maeve, the fairy queen, granted him a magical lantern as repayment for his friendship to the fairies. The power of this lantern is pretty interesting. It slowly waxes until its peak at midnight and then slowly wanes until it's at its weakest at noon. With his lantern, Jack is able to fly, teleport himself or others, generate blasts of energy, create illusions, generate fog, change the size of enemies, and bind them inside the lantern. And he can also become superhumanly strong and durable. Using the lantern, he took up the identity of Jack-o'-lantern and became Ireland's premier superhero, eventually joining the Global Guardians, even getting 2 successors in the form of Marvin Noronha and eventually Liam McHugh. Number 7. The Red Bee. The Red Bee from DC Comics comes from a time in comic books and the superhero genre when superheroes were really just pulp vigilantes who had some kind of really minor edge over the criminals they would be thwarting. Rick Raleigh was the assistant to the district attorney, and with this look at the criminal justice system, he grew tired of seeing criminals escape justice either through technicalities or because the court system was just too slow. Growing fed up with this, Rick decided he would create a costumed identity to bring criminals to justice. But as a normal, intelligent guy with a flawless moral compass and a decent right hook, he didn't really have an edge over those he was facing. Enter Michael. Michael was a trained bee, like the insect that Rick would keep in his belt buckle. Michael was a unique kind of bee though. As we know, bees don't survive for too long after they sting someone, and luckily, Michael had the advantage of being able to sting people multiple times. Michael, coupled with Rick's fists and other equipment, would be the bane of villains everywhere, and thus, the Red Bee was born. Number 6. Cloud. There's really no other way to say this. Marvel's Cloud is a sentient nebula hundreds of thousands of years away from becoming a star. That's actually what they are. Cloud began to notice stars disappearing from the space surrounding it, which caused the nebula to feel fear for some reason. And because of that, a newly emerged cosmic cube known as Cubic was attracted to Cloud and came to their aid. Now, hoping that the Earth's heroes could somehow do something to help, Cloud made their way to our planet only to inadvertently cause a young couple, Carol Faber and Danny Milligan, to get distracted while driving and crash their car. When Cloud attempted to help the couple, they tried to enter into their minds but were instead bombarded with the unique human psyche. For some reason, this transformed Cloud into a replica of Carol, with no memories of their former self. This made Cloud the perfect target for the Secret Empire, which is a cult-like offshoot of Hydra that then weaponized Cloud to suit their own nefarious ends before she was eventually taken on to the Defenders team. Number 5. Elongated Man. When Ralph Dibny was a tiny little Ralph Dibny, he saw a contortionist at a carnival and he was instantly down to be able to be like that guy. Everyone had their thing, and for Ralph, his thing was trying to figure out how someone could twist and fold their body into all sorts of shapes like a contortionist could. Obsessed with learning the secrets of the contortionists, for years and years Ralph figured out that all the contortionists he observed drank the same drink. Not some crazy formula, not some kind of tea, but it was actually a popular soft drink known as Gingold. Now, Ralph knew for the most part that it was just a coincidence that they all drank the same drink. But that doesn't mean he wasn't gonna bet everything he had on it. Ralph literally taught himself chemistry, and he used his newly found chemistry skills to create a super concentrated extract from the fruit that was the basis and heart for Gingold, the Gingo fruit. And what do you know? The super concentrated extract allowed him to make any part of his body stretch to a ridiculous degree. What's that I hear you say? Why yes, this does make no sense. Number 4. Flex Mentallo. The Doom Patrol is a unique team to say the least. Their whole thing is that their powers are weird enough that they were shunned, made fun of, etc, etc, and so they pulled together to make their own team. A bunch of them could make this list, but the one member who I think deserves to make it onto this list is Flex Mentallo. He first appeared in Doom Patrol Volume 2, number 35 in 1990, and was essentially created by another metahuman by the name of Wallace Sage. Wallace has the ability to take any drawing he makes and turn it into real life. With that power, he created Flex. Now, Flex himself was given the mysterious and kind of hilarious power of muscle mystery, which allows him to alter reality by flexing different muscles. For example, flexing his scalenus minimus, Flex has the ability to survive in the vacuum of space for an extended amount of time. His other powers include enhanced senses, mind control, precognition, reality alteration, superhuman durability, superhuman strength, and telepathy, all by flexing different muscles. Number 3. Puck. The Alpha Flight member known as Puck was at one point literally just a little person who pushed himself to turn his body into an almost perfect physical specimen, able to lift hundreds of pounds and fight as well as his fellow Alpha Flighters. But this was before his Alpha Flight days. He had tons of adventures and his pretty basic but mysterious backstory added to his likability. Now, the dumb part came much later on when it was revealed that Puck was actually much older than he seemed and was not actually born as a little person. Apparently, Puck used to be 7 feet tall and was a mercenary and adventurer who was born near the start of the 20th century. As a merc, he was hired to steal the Black Blade of Baghdad, and he totally did it, but then it unleashed an ancient magical being known as Black Razor. In order to defeat Black Razor, Puck sucked him into his own body, becoming immortal in the process, but also losing half of his height and being trapped in the form of a little person. Why? I don't know. Number 2. Whizzer. Bob Frank and his father Emil were traveling through Africa when they both unfortunately came down with an extremely deadly illness. Now, needing a transfusion in order to save their lives, Emil made it a mission to find someone who would be willing to help them and to save Bob's life. Apparently, there was absolutely no one who could help them out. But then, to make matters so much more worse, Bob also got bitten by a very deadly cobra. Bob was not having a good go of things here, and when that happened, a mongoose then just happened to show up and it introduced that snake to the afterlife. Now of course, this must have been a sign, and Emil had the bright idea to use this mongoose for the blood transfusion to save his own son's life. Don't worry about how a mongoose and a human are completely different, he was going to save his son's life. Not only did the mongoose DNA running through his son's veins save his life, but naturally, this had the added benefit of allowing Bob to now run at super speed? Apparently though, this was just common information, as Emil explained it as nonchalantly as pouring a cup of tea. Later on, it would be revealed that Frank had natural powers that were just jump-started by the addition of the mongoose DNA, but of course, that's only after they realized how that makes no sense. And in at number 1 today is Liesl Pawn. The Green Lantern Corps, actually every Lantern Corps really, has members of all different shapes and sizes. But what utterly baffles me personally is knowing that the Green Lanterns have a super intelligent, justice-seeking smallpox virus on their roster. Assigned to Sector 119, Liesl Pawn wasn't really able to join the other Lanterns in team meetings on the Green Lantern world because this Lantern risked infecting all the others. Liesl Pawn's partner in Sector 119 was called Remus. Now, I say was because Remus was a fatal victim of Despotellus, another sentient virus and also part of the Yellow Lantern Corps, the Sinestro Corps. Despotellus infected 85% of the planets in Sector 119, which caused the passing of Liesl's partner. Despotellus then went on to infect Guy Gardner. Now, wanting revenge for the attack on her sector and the loss of Remus, Liesl Pawn was injected into Guy Gardner and then did battle with Despotellus inside of Guy Gardner, defeating and capturing the Yellow Lantern virus, who Liesl brought back to Oa for a Green Lantern doctor to work on a vaccine to wipe out Despotellus for good. And that's all I know about this character.
In at number 10, Doctor Strange. Dr. Stephen Strange was once a world-renowned surgeon. With such a high-ranking position in his field, many viewed him to be a bit of an egotistical jerk from time to time. In a freak car accident that nearly took his life, the doctor woke up in a hospital bed with his hands floating in casts before his very eyes. His entire profession depended on just how steady his hands were, and now with such terrible nerve damage, he would never be able to operate on patients ever again. You can imagine the psychological toll that this would play on your brain, having your entire livelihood ripped away from you after one accident. Luckily, in his search for a cure, which just seemed like a pipe dream at the time, he soon found himself in the Himalayas. After meeting the Ancient One and undergoing rigorous training, he was finally able to let go of the pain that this accident had caused him. In at number 9, Superman. We all know the story of Superman, but the majority of people gloss over just how tragic this origin truly is. Perhaps it's because after his ship crash landed on Earth, he was raised by such a wholesome family that fostered him and his alien powers. When you really think about it though, his home planet had exploded, which completely wiped everyone that loved him. A whole world full of people just like him was now gone. He now has the awful task of being raised in a world where he is the obvious outcast. Imagine finding out that you were adopted and then discovering that you're this mysterious alien. It's hard enough to discover your own life's purpose, but for Clark Kent, most of the time he would be dealing with split personalities his entire life. He has to be both Clark Kent, the average human, while simultaneously exploring his powers to rid the planet of evil. In at number 8, Daredevil. As the story goes in the first issue of the 1964 Daredevil series, a young Matt Murdock is walking home from school when in the distance he sees trouble brewing for an elderly man. Little did the man know, a truck was heading in his direction and death was knocking at his door. Not on Matt's watch though. In a heroic act, the teenager throws himself in front to save this elderly man. In the process of doing such a selfless act though, his eyes are sprayed with these radioactive chemicals. The man was saved, Matt survived, but the chemicals had left him permanently blind. Nothing says tragic like a teenager with his whole life in front of him being told by a doctor that he would be blind for life. Luckily, this is the comic book world, so he was able to spin this into a strength and become the superhero that we know and love as Daredevil. However, in any other world, this story of a hero sacrificing himself for the betterment of others is inherently a tragic tale. In at number 7, Spider-Man. The majority of these tragic stories begin with the hero having no powers, for which a tragic occurrence then leads to them either discovering or developing them. For Peter Parker, he had already been bitten by a radioactive spider that gifted him with his new powers. Although, with his newfound powers, he believed that this was his way to make some money in show business. However, with this distraction now in his life, it pulled him away from being at home to watch over his elderly Aunt May and Uncle Ben. As fate would have it, an intruder burst into the home, attempting to rob the place, only to fire a single fatal shot at Uncle Ben. Peter largely blamed Uncle Ben's death on himself for being too late to save him, even tossing his Spider-Man attire into a closet, wishing that he had never left. This is a tragic story not only because Peter takes the full blame of this freak occurrence, but it soon fills him with vengeance, which is not a great way to start a hero's journey. In at number 6, Dr. Manhattan. Born as Jonathan Osterman, the Doctor had lived a very normal life. It's July of 1959, and Dr. Osterman was in love with a woman named Janie Slater. She was a physicist like John, and at 30 years old, he had his whole life in front of him. The two were first introduced to each other by a good friend of John's from college named Wally Weaver. After leaving the intrinsic field laboratory one day with Wally and Janie, John realizes that he left his watch inside. Little did John know was that the intrinsic field room was on a timer, and when he entered, the door closed behind him, locking John inside. When he tries to open it, Wally is on the other side and is quickly turning very pale. Wally realized that there was nothing that they could do to save him, and after being blasted by radiation, his colleagues watched helplessly as it essentially just vaporized him. This tragedy could be the origin of when Manhattan really started to separate himself from the rest of humanity. Additionally, he was blamed for the death of his friend Wally, who would pass away from cancer 20 years later. Man, that's tragic. And at number 5, Rocket Raccoon. Imagine a little raccoon running free, rummaging through trash cans and building a home in the forest. Now, take those innocent beginnings and throw in an unknown, creepy, mad scientist into the mix. This is Rocket's tragic origins. Once a free animal doing his thing, he was kidnapped and experimented on. First, they surgically attached cybernetic implants and then gave this innocent animal the mental capacity for not just self-awareness, but consciousness as well. Then, the newly armed and murderous raccoon became a violent space pirate known simply as just 89P1. Never a good start when your new name starts with numbers. Combined with the psychological effect this would have on his new identity, Rocket was also aware that he was the only one of his kind. Now he leads the lonely life of being possibly the universe's only talking raccoon. In at number 4, Spawn. Typically, the rule of thumb when it comes to origins is that the more terrifying the hero, the more tragic their story must be. Spawn fits this formula to a T. Born Albert Francis Simmons, Al was a contract killer, and after being betrayed by his best friend, he was murdered on the job. Soon, the once highly capable CIA operative is having his soul sent to the bowels of hell, and while there he strikes up a deal with a demon allowing him to return back to Earth. However, he never returned in the way that he left. Instead, he was a disfigured demonic entity known as Spawn. To make matters worse and beyond tragic, in the 5 years that he had been dead, his wife remarried. Although she didn't just marry anyone, she married the man that killed Al, while also letting this killer father a child? Needless to say, Spawn was more than a little bummed out about this, and not to mention, this deal he struck up with his devil was really a ruse to further the demon's unholy war against all life. In at number 3, Batman. As sad as Superman's story was and the whole not knowing his parents thing, a much more tragic story would be knowing them, loving them, and losing them right before your eyes. This is Bruce Wayne's story for all of eternity. He must live with the recurring nightmare of watching his entire life be destroyed in a dark alleyway, something that would mentally break even the strongest of human beings. When a common street thug robbed the Waynes at gunpoint, they refused to give in to the criminal's demands, causing the man to shoot them both, leaving a young boy alone with his deceased parents in the dangerous streets of Gotham. This was a pivotal moment in Bruce's life and became the obsessive driving factor for really everything. He began training day after day, seeking to destroy the entire criminal underworld of Gotham that took his parents. In at number 2, Rorschach. Ranking near the top as one of the more tragic origin stories, we have Walter Kovacs. Born into a terrible home, his father was extremely abusive and his mother was a prostitute. Walter's parents never allowed him to truly experience the world. As such, his view was that the majority of life on Earth had evil intentions. His father would mercilessly beat him while also taking away any form of education in his life. Ironically, Walter was born as a very intelligent child who actually was excelling in his classes and had displayed interest in religious education. His father's violence beat any longing for knowledge out of him though, turning his life into a series of heinous crimes. For example, at just 10 years old, he shoved a lit cigarette into the eye of an older child who was bullying him, leaving the boy partially blinded and sending Walter to jail. This was the turning point where he became the homeless vigilante who wears a literal psychiatric experiment for a mask and goes by the name Rorschach. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Eric Draven. This makes our number 1 spot because the tragedy in this comic book stretches beyond the pages and into the author's real life. The character of Eric Draven in the story of The Crow is extremely dark and was the way for James O'Barr to channel his anger and pain of losing his fiancée to a drunk driver. In the story, Eric and his girlfriend Shelley are returning from a romantic vacation when their car breaks down on the side of the road. A gang notices and decides to capitalize on the couple's misfortune. After shooting Eric in the head, he's forced to watch them brutally beat and murder his girlfriend before he too finally dies. Soon Eric is resurrected from the dead, given the gift and curse of immortality while being guided by a supernatural crow. Eric then begins tracking down each of these thugs and makes them each suffer the same brutality that his girlfriend went through. So tragic. I think I might go cry into a pizza now.